And you're live.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, particularly good evening for Jaclyn. It's 10 o'clock where she is, but she's still awake, a champ. Anyway,
Hey,
we're here to talk about her new book, The Main Attraction, and it does have a really beautiful cover,
the main
doesn't
character.
it?
The
Yeah. What did I say? Oh, sorry. What did I say? The main chance?
attraction. Yeah.
You're right. Okay, well, that means the type confused me. It is the main character, and it's called the main character for a reason because there is an author and her characters and a plot that are in motion in the book. So character is actually a better word than attraction now that I think about it. So there's a really very moving note from Jaclyn at the back of the book, which I urge you to read when you're finished with the book and not before, which will explain to you some of the personal reasons behind the story. But let's talk first about the Orient Express. Now, I have always wanted, Jaclyn. I've always sort of thought I wanted to go, but every time I've looked at it, and I'm not a cost-conscious traveler, believe me, I never could justify spending that much money for like one night on the train, which is more or less what it is from, Venice to Istanbul. So you've chosen sort of a different route for this version of the Orient Express. Is it a real one? Did you do it?
Well, so it's really funny because I mean, I completely invented it. I kind of thought cruise ships, take you to play, they stop off, you get off and you explore. And I was thinking, why don't trains do that? That sounds really fun. And so I invented this whole route down the Mediterranean coast of Italy, stopping at all the places like that are my favorite spots in Italy. So Cinque Terre and Rome, I love so much. And then it was really funny because the Orient Express just announced, I don't know, 6 months ago, definitely after I'd written the book, that they're doing this new route to Liguria in Italy. It's a different route, it's Paris, but I was just thought it was so funny that so fitting they're starting it next month that, they sort of like I picked up that they were, I don't know, creating this route or somehow it serendipitously um converged
Well,
my
I
book.
think that luxury train travel is making a real comeback. For example, there is another version of the Orient Express that runs through Malaysia. I think it goes from Bangkok to Kuala Lumpur or the other way.
Really?
Yep. And tempted. I've never been to Malaysia. I've been to Bangkok, yeah, no, but I think that would be great. I have taken was it Rovos Express from Johannesburg to Cape Town, which is
Wow.
again a luxury train trip using and their problem was, and is for a lot of these, that if they're using the old tracks, they're narrow gauge, and the luxury train today, with the larger needs a wider track, or they have to. So, there's some real problems with them doing it. And then I've also been on the one from Lake Titicaca all the way to Machu Picchu, which is another fabulous luxury train. So
Wow.
I know I love
I
luxury
might
trains.
I might need to pick your brain in terms of writing destination thrillers. You have all the good
You
travel,
could.
the
Yes.
exotic spots for me to.
Well, there's one in New Zealand that goes from Christchurch across to the coast. There's one that actually runs
Wow.
through Turkey now. But for some reason, although I love the glamour of the Simplon Orient Express, and while I have stayed at the Petra Palace, which was the hotel destination in Istanbul where Agatha Christie had her room, and the train stopped at the station there. I'm trying to remember the name of it, which is now given over to whirling dervishes and performances because the train hasn't come in. But it would have been where Christie and all those people taking the Orient Express would have gotten off the train and gone up
Wow.
to the Para Palace. But my point is that cruising has become so enormously popular that the railroad industry, whatever is left
Yeah.
of it after it's been decimated by airplane and automobile cars, has seen an opening. Do you know there's a very good one that goes through the Highlands in Scotland?
Wow. No, I
Yeah,
didn't know
no,
any
there's a
of these.
terrific train that goes, I'm trying to remember the whole route, but you can traverse Scotland. There's the Scotsman that goes from London to Edinburgh, but it's really more of a commuter train. But then there's a fabulous train, which is sort of on my bucket list. And then I have also gone with a railroad touring company, and they have a terrific trip, but it's not luxury, but it's really nice, from Sweden all the way up into Lapland, and then you cross over to Norway, to Narvik,
Wow.
Norway, and you come all the way back to Oslo, and that's a
That sounds
super trip.
incredible. Wow.
And then there's a whole series of them you can do in Switzerland. Do you know that? You know, the
No, my writer, I wish I was taking notes. My writer's brain is
well, we
working.
could do this, but I mean, the Glacier Express that goes from Zermatt to St. Moritz, and then you take the Bernini Express from St. Moritz to either Lake Como,
Mm.
Lake Garda, and then you take the William Tell Express that goes back to Lucerne, and part of the time you're on a ferry. And then I don't remember the name of the last one, but you can take another one from Lucerne back to Lake Geneva, not to Geneva itself, but another. Anyway, there are these things all over. So if you want to write destination thrillers and you want to make like railroads your specialty, you've got lots of room.
I have the expert here. I have
I
all my
know.
ideas now.
Well, it's, if you're
It's
old,
true because, I've written a couple articles in connection with this book about like thrillers set on a train. And yeah, it's a lot. It's there's so much more train than exists in thrillers. I mean, it's a lot of like the Orient Express or commuter trains, but there's a lot of room to explore.
well, there really is. Benjamin Stevenson, did you read either of his books?
Mm.
Everyone I wanted to, I'm trying to remember, it's Everyone I Loved or Everyone I Want to Kill or something is on this
No,
train.
I've heard of, but I haven't read.
They're fun. There are two of them, and
Oh,
he's all
sorry. Wait, I blanked. I've actually read both of them, and I just read his the Australia train one. Yeah, it was
right.
amazing. Everyone on this train is a suspect. Yeah.
That's it, right? Anyway,
Mhm.
I did a Zoom event with him, and it was really fun to talk. I think that airplane travel is not glamorous. I'm old enough to remember when before jets, when I commuted from Chicago to Palo Alto, well, San Francisco, Palo Alto, when I was a freshman at Stanford, and I almost didn't go back because after Christmas vacation because I got so sick on DC-8s on the jets. And my father
Wow.
said to me, just hang on, he said, because in the spring they're going to put the first jet in from Chicago to San Francisco, and you will find that the flight will be smooth and you won't get so airsick. So
Wow.
we all fell in love, with flying, but it was glamorous then. I mean, we got dressed up. We put on high heels and nylons, and we wore suits, and people could still smoke. And the configuration would be there was a table, and there would be two and two. So two of you flew backwards. The seats were not.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean
That would not be
it
good
was
for my
like a
cardiac.
series of cocktail parties on the plane, and they had real silverware, and so it was glamorous, and I think that
Yeah.
people really like that. But now airplane travel, I mean, you go to the airport and people are in their pajamas, and they're carrying their pet parrot, and they cram you in, and it's just, I mean, it's not fun anymore. It's really
Yeah.
like going on a bus. And I think as a result, there really is a market opening up for train travel and especially luxury train travel, if you're not in a hurry, which is the
Yeah.
advantage that airplanes have.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Do you
agree.
have it? Did you have? I mean, you're speaking to me from Israel, so is there any train travel in Israel?
There is like more commuter trains. I wouldn't call them glamorous.
Right.
Glamorous trains. Yeah. But there's a lot of train travel. I
Is
think
there?
for me, it's fun. I mean, as a writer, when I'm, thinking about picking a destination, it's more fun for me to do the Orient Express than say a commuter train. I love the ambiance. And if I'm going to spend a year working on the book and immersing myself there, it's more fun to be, on the Orient Express and the Mediterranean coast than on a commuter train somewhere. But yeah,
Yeah, no, totally. And I love the way you describe it with all the beautifully polished wood and because trains really were beautiful when they were the luxury way to travel. And they did have, gorgeous wood and they had marble and they had your picture of the dining car is so or the bar car, so to speak. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's like going
aw,
to the Savoy or something, or you're sitting on plush furniture and everybody's
yeah.
dressed up. I loved your Italian lady in her, evening gown at 5:30 and her red dress and all the rest of
Aw.
it. So anyway, tell us about the setup for the story, because the Orient Express trip here is integral to the story that you're telling.
Yeah, the first like inkling was when I read an article about how they were refurbishing the trains so that they looked like they did in the golden age of travel. And like we're talking about, that just sounded so enticing to me as a story location. And I had the first scene in my mind and I had no clue where it came from. I had seen, or the second chapter actually, I had seen this girl walk on the train and, given this luxury trip, and then all of a sudden see all these people she knew. So her brother, I saw seeing her brother, her best friend, and her ex-fiance. And I was like, okay, how did they all get there? And so then I had to work backwards, and somehow I got this idea of this mysterious reclusive author who like her whole conceit is that she hires people as her main character, because she has so much trauma in her past. She doesn't want to delve into her own life because as authors we're, mining our own experiences for our characters. And so she doesn't want to go there. So she hires someone to be her main character. And then from there, the story flowed to me. But yeah, those were kind of the origin points.
I thought that was such a fascinating idea. I mean, I spend a fair amount of my time, in fact, I am this evening, with co-authors. Either they are writing in legacy mode, i.e., writing at, like tonight is a Tom Clancy. We're doing Jack Ryan, and
Oh, wow.
we have a new legacy author, a pair of authors writing in that. Um, and so I'm familiar with authors who either their estates, or sometimes they're authors who are with us but have ideas for stories, but their own workload is so heavy already that they can't write the new book as well as what they are under contract to write. And so they hire people to work with them. But I have to say, your idea of, hiring a main character, hence the title of the book, hiring somebody and then interviewing them and then interviewing people in their lives and basically constructing the story out of somebody's real life, but fictionalizing it. So it's kind of a weird memoir or fiction or whatever it might be. But I think you could actually do it. That's the part I thought was so interesting. I'm wondering if you're going to give somebody the idea of writing a novel that way, because then you don't
Oh,
really
that's
have to
funny.
plot it.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I mean, I think because as authors, we get inspiration from everywhere. So sometimes it is someone has like a fascinating life story and your mind starts rolling as to what you could do with that, like how you're going to spin it out in your fictional way. And so, yeah, I think it could be done. Um, it was really fun to play with.
Well, it was. I mean, you'd have all kinds of, legal things and NDAs and other stuff if you're,
Right.
involving all these real people. And I thought, that you're, sorry, I always have trouble with names at this point. Rory,
Yeah.
was she ever aware that Geneva, the author who has this interesting writing process, was going to be interviewing people in Rory's lives in order to construct the plot? Or did Rory naively think that it was just Geneva was going to extract the whole book from just Rory?
No, Rory consented to it, like to her interviewing her family, but I don't think she knew it was going to be as intrusive as it was. Like the questions, I don't think she knew that she was sending out private investigators to investigate them. Um, yeah, so I don't think she knew that part.
Well, but I mean, the thing is that's really naive in a way. Well, not in a way, it's really naive. Why am I qualifying it? To
Yeah.
think that once you started investing, learning things from other people, that any secrets that you had, or any illusions that you had, or stories you told yourself about your own life were going to be subject to dissection.
Yeah, totally. I think that because Rory's at this point in her life where everything's falling apart, her fiance broke up with her, she lost her job, her dad has Alzheimer's, and she gets offered $100,000 for this kind of plush job in Italy, that maybe the all those other like warning bells were kind of pushed down because this felt like the perfect. the perfect
Well,
solution.
I think what it says in part is that, we kind of gloss over or maybe just submerge things that we did in the past, and we don't realize, until somebody else is looking at them,
Yeah.
exactly what they were. And so Rory does have actions in her past and fractures in her family and so forth, that if she'd really thought about it, 'cause she was in a kind of fugue state, as you say, due to the things that were going on, she would have realized that poking into all that was probably going to turn out to be painful.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
And it
I
turned
think
out,
yeah, I think I needed her also for a story perspective and a character perspective. I needed her to just go in it, but and I think it worked with like the low place she was in her life. But yeah, I agree with you.
no, I'm not saying it didn't work. I'm just saying that, you needed to make her in a very bad place, or as I say, kind of a
Totally.
fugue state for her, because she, is a news anchor. She's, and a smart, intelligent person. If she'd been on her game, she would have realized that this is
Totally.
a high risk project.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, and part of it also is that, if you're used to having a job and a decent paycheck and so forth, and you suddenly are unemployed and don't have access to any kind of money and don't know where it's going to come from, because I'm not sure, where what she's done is necessarily a career path that she can continue to follow. I mean,
Right.
if she gets, fired from an anchor job because of a breach of ethics, or just carelessness, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't leave her in a good place to be looking for, another high paying job. And if you're used to having money and a
Yeah.
job, what do you do? So I
Yeah.
can really see her looking at this going, oh, in a temporary way, well, $100,000 for however many weeks it is, will at least tide her over while she
Yeah.
tries to figure out her life.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was like a little bit of saving her and giving her space to work out what her next step was. And that's like where the meditation a bit came in, where she was kind of thinking of an alternative career path and what she might do with her life. And she's in her early 30s. I also was in my early 30s when I quit my law job and decided to travel the world and write novels. So maybe there was some
No,
parallel
I
there.
remember we had that conversation last year when we talked
Yeah.
about the Chateau, that was your debut, wasn't it? The
Yeah.
Chateau.
Well, that was my debut in thriller, but I published like a historical fiction a couple of years before that.
That's right. Under the same name.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only known you in the thriller context. What
Yeah.
did you write your historical fiction about? I'll have to go look for it.
Oh, thank you. It's called When We Were Young, and it's based in Corfu, Greece, for a big part of it. And there's really interesting Holocaust history in Greece, which growing up as a Jew, I had no clue. And so I thought, okay, if I don't know it as a Jew, then probably a lot of other people don't know. And on the Greek islands, and I did research. And anyway, so it's like it's more mostly set in contemporary times, but there's like a storyline that's set
Well, I
in
will
the
definitely do that.
1940s
I
in
was
Greece.
really entranced with the PBS. Um, I'm trying to remember what the series was called, but the whole British
Oh
family
yes, I watched it. What was it
was
called?
set in
I watched it for that. Yeah.
the guy that
The oh, I don't know. It's
Well, it's
slipping
the
my.
guy that wrote the Alexandria Quartet, his family, his eccentric mother,
Yes.
and I thought that it was, among other things, it was a love letter to Corfu. I mean,
Yes,
obviously
it
it's a
completely.
fictionalized version. Oh, it's the Durrells, that's it.
The Durrells, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lawrence Durrell wrote the Alexandria Quartet, which I well remember reading when I, I think I read it as an undergraduate. It's hard to remember when you really run into wonderful books. I mean, when did I actually read The Lord of the Rings? Oh, when did I read The Fountainhead? When did I read The Once and Future King? They're books that you kind of live with, but sometimes I have trouble at my age looking back and trying to remember when was it that I first encountered them. And I'm not a rereader. I know a lot of people are, but
I am.
well, I have an eidetic memory, and therefore I don't actually forget.
Wow.
I know
Wow.
it's a curse and a blessing. It's not, I mean, it's both. And I can remember them so vividly that, and I know that I can't recreate that same sense of excitement and wonder rereading it that I did the first
Mhm.
time. It's true that it might be a different and equally rewarding experience to read it now, but there are also just so many books that
There are so many books. I think a few are comfort books to me, so those are ones I'll reread.
there are comfort books indeed, but I keep hoping to discover new ones. So
Yeah, totally. I
rare,
understand.
right? But anyway, I do remember the Alexandria Quartet for its interesting story structure. If you recall, it's the same story told in four books through four different points of view. So
Oh, I know.
everything you thought you knew in the first book, by the time you'd read your way through it, recognize that oh, it's a little bit like what you find out in this book. You know, when we first meet your characters, we think we know who they are, and you tell us a certain amount about them. By the time we get to the end, they aren't those people.
Right.
Um, and so really Durrell was kind of doing that. But anyway, Corfu. So wasn't it just wonderful?
Yeah, I actually got to go there to do research and it's amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing island.
Wonderful. Well, I will certainly look up your book because I think that would be, I've been to other Greek islands, but not Corfu. Um, all right. So you had fun. Have you actually been on any luxury train yourself? You did so well describing this. I felt like you must have had some experience.
No, nothing like that. Wow. And I know my mom's watching this and she's gonna be like, you don't remember the name of this train, but there was a train that we went on when I was in high school across Canada. That was like, it wasn't the Orient Express by any means, but it was nice. I don't remember the name of it, but that's the only train that I've been on that was not a commuter train.
So did you go all the way across Canada from the eastern Canada to the west, or did you go from
No, not
Vancouver
all.
up to the
Yeah,
Rockies?
not all the way. Yeah.
That's another luxury train that goes from Vancouver to Banff, and then you can reverse it. That one, since you've actually done that, you might find that fun, although Canada, is another world to
Yeah.
explore if you do it. It's called the Rocky Mountaineer, and it's a very heavily traveled route through the Canadian Rockies.
Maybe
And
that is, it might be, I don't know. I was 15, so my
oh, your
memory is
mom
not
can tell you
amazing from
when you
that.
come here. But anyway, another fun train. So I think one of my questions would be, and I haven't been in this, particular, but at one point there's some violence going on and attempted murder and actually a murder. Um, I wonder if you can really stuff somebody out the window of a train.
Wow, I
You know?
really agonized over that, I have to say, not to give any spoilers to anyone, but
No.
yeah, I think I always feel like climax scenes are well, they're the hardest. Like you almost feel like you're a director and that you're trying to place everyone and you're like paying attention to all the movements. And then for this one in copy edits, I realized like I had gotten certain things wrong. And but yeah, it was, you're stuffed on the train, like how to have a murder on a train when the cabins are like so close together and you know everyone really could hear it probably through the walls. And so how do you not make it too loud and um kind of using, also I wanted to use the train in creative ways to have the murder happen. So yeah, hopefully I made it as realistic as possible, but also
Hey, it's a book, it's
yeah,
fiction.
exactly,
Different.
suspending a little disbelief.
Well, the way the British trains are set up, they actually have doors, to the outside.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. If you look at some of the old Agatha Christie on TV stuff and all, they don't always get in at either end of the car. Sometimes they, have doors. Um,
Right.
so, that I could see. In most of the great train chases, they're up on top of the train.
Exactly.
You see them, Westerns with the guys and the guns and they're running back and forth, on top of the train
Yeah.
and all of it.
Well, it was fun and also Benjamin Stevenson's book, seeing how he did it. Like I won't spoil, but yeah, there was also some on the top of the train things, and I was thinking.
Well, that's just an
That's
attempt
cool.
to overcome the fact that the windows on the train are small, so,
Yeah.
but you could certainly, it's certainly easy to believe that in these beautiful cabins, and I thought the one you described that Rory was in was just sounded gorgeous. Wow.
Aw.
That you could have a big window,
Yeah, it
so,
does sound so fun.
right.
I would love to be in that cabin.
So here's Rory, whom we meet her, and she has completed her gig, her $100,000 gig with this author who has going to structure. And the author, if I remember right, in this book, has been a world's number one, but then her last book essentially bombed. Did you ever tell us exactly why it bombed? I don't want you to give anything away, but I'm trying to remember in the book. Do we know why her last book
Yeah,
cratered?
I think I just kind of said vaguely that she got reviews that like her characters were cardboard cutouts and that maybe it was just like missing the magic. Yeah. Yeah,
So she needs to have a successful book,
exactly. I
for-
wanted her to feel a little bit desperate. Yeah.
oh. And so as a reward, tell us about because this trip is orchestrated by the author, not by Rory. So that was a wonderful idea.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I loved that she was like pulling the strings behind the scenes and it was fun because it added to the like menace of the trip. There were almost like two layers of deceptions. There's the people, the Rory and her crew, like her brother, her fiance, and her ex-fiance and best friend, who are all hiding secrets from each other. And then there's the layer of the author, who's also, you don't know whether to trust her motives. So I loved that the deception was kind of coming from all angles. And she didn't know, Rory didn't know who to trust, because also she didn't know if the author had paid out, people on the or people on the train informants. She's feeling like this real life main character now on this trip that she didn't expect. So I liked how all those factors kind of played in.
So Rory actually thinks that this is a trip just for her. And she gets on the train, and to her amazement, when she goes to the bar car with the somewhat robotic steward, that but, anyway, you're assigned in a luxury trip, you're often assigned like a butler or a steward or somebody to look after you. On cruise ships, they unpack you and iron your clothes, bring you drinks, whatever it might be. Anyway, she arrives at the bar car thinking this is just going to be her trip and she's going to have, this lovely cruise down the Italian Riviera in the train. And suddenly she sees these three people from her past and her life and recognizes that the author has brought them all together. I mean, if I were Rory, I would have been really angry about that. I mean, confused too, but really angry to be confronted by it. So how did you feel that Rory would react?
I think she was angry, but I think she was also in a place of her life of such upheaval and so much confusion, with where her future is, with where like that her father is sick, her like now her fiance's here, her brother's mad at her. I won't give away the secret she found out from the author, but she found out something about her life that she didn't know. And so I think that there's so much going on that she's angry, but there's a lot of factors.
Well, I thought her first reaction was to see if she sits there, but finally bolts, back to her beautiful, really luxury cabin. And just to get away from it all was a really natural thing to do rather than sit there. I mean, we're all prisoners of, but we're not all prisoners of, but many of us are prisoners of good manners and all. We don't want to make
Yeah.
a fuss in public. And, we feel like, especially if we're in public, we have to not make scenes or whatever it all is. So it was a tough spot for her to suddenly have to face these people and not quite know what to do about it. So running back to her cabin made perfectly good sense to me.
Yeah. Also, she had, just been on a meditation retreat, a silent meditation retreat for 10 days. So I think she was looking forward to just like peace and quiet by herself. And I mean, I'm an introvert. I think Rory's less introverted than me, but more extroverted. But still, you to be like confronted by people when you didn't expect them after meditating for 10 days, probably. is
Well,
my
and
most
these are the people who, to a great degree, cause the upheavals in your life. Um,
right.
it,
Exactly.
it circles back to that, the worst hurts and all the rest of it are usually from the people closest to you.
Yeah.
Strangers can't do you that kind of damage. But you just brought up another thing. I thought you described the meditation and some of the techniques and so forth that Rory has learned or wants to learn really well. Is that something you do yourself?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have been a meditator for 10 years. I do Vedic meditations, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. And actually I have two like close girlfriends who both were news anchors and left their jobs, and one of them became a meditation teacher. So that was like fun little inspiration for me.
So meditation teacher, what does that involve?
She teaches like full-time meditation. So she teaches people the techniques. So Vedic meditation, you have to be certified and this whole long process. And it's like a mantra-based meditation. So you're given a mantra and you're taught how to use it and how to meditate. I highly recommend it. It's amazing.
Does that help you with your writing?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's a de-stressing mechanism. So I think like stress kind of sits on top of the surface of creativity. And when it's like kind of fizzles away in meditation, I think it's easier to access my creativity.
So you're in a fairly stressful place in your country at the moment. Do you think that, it sounds like meditation would be a really helpful thing
Yeah,
for you, but
totally. I mean, I definitely,
how long have you lived in Israel?
8 years as of last week. Yeah.
Wow, lots of things going on. And it almost presents itself as a thriller, doesn't it, in real life?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's like, after it happened in October 7th, I really felt like, how am I going to write murder mysteries again? Like, because I write these fun, I like to think of them as happy, fun murder mysteries, with glamour and destination thriller, but they're more fun. And it was very hard to think of murder as fun after October 7th. And yeah, I think time moves on and I can go back to what I love, but it was interesting.
Do you plan to stay in Israel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point that the contrast, but then again, maybe we survive the really worst of times by taking ourselves to destinations that are
Exactly.
less stressful, more glamorous, whatever. I remember the chateau. You described that so well, and that was, let's face it, there are luxury spas. There, destination thrillers. You can go on forever, or you can be on a yacht.
I
You
plan
can
to.
go to a spa. I mean, we talked about trains, but there are all kinds of there are airplane travels now. I know the Wall Street Journal, I don't know, at least once a year puts together a luxury private jet, trip around the world. I think
No
it's
way.
oh yeah,
Really?
it's about $100,000 a person, if I remember right. And they
Interesting.
go to I'm trying to think where some of the places, there's usually an island of the South Pacific. They might go to Seoul, South Korea. They almost always go to Ulaanbaatar. Sometimes they land in Venice or, but I mean, basically they circumnavigate the world and they pick, I don't know, they have different itineraries. But I've looked at them two or three times because I wonder, am I ever really going to go to Mongolia, which is one of the few places I have not been. And and it struck every once in a while. I'm kind of tempted by the thought of going just because such a cool name, if nothing else. Where have you been?
Wow.
Ulaanbaatar.
Right.
Throw it out there.
Wow.
But I can also see that if you are a small group of people in a plane, which is a far more confining,
Yeah, my wheels are
structure
turning.
than a train, and you are with those people for a considerable period of time, and you're, all that, the sort of stress of travel and so forth. Um, I can see that you could really develop some interesting thriller
Oh my
aspects.
God. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's fascinating. It's funny you say it because I've thought about would I ever want to do an airplane story, and I just haven't thought of, like Agatha Christie did her plane, but
Right.
it's like what you said, it was so much more glamorous back then. So it hasn't sounded very appealing to me until you just described this scenario, and now
Yeah,
my
no,
wheels are turning.
they are luxury jets, I
Yeah.
mean, and I don't think they stay in hotels. I might be wrong, and maybe they do somewhere, but I do know somebody that I'm trying to remember if they actually did it. It was a very well-known author. Um, and I'm trying to remember if they talked about doing it and it never happened or whether they actually went. But I think they actually went, but you know, because airplane travel is not, you can't like lay out all your stuff like you can in a cabin on the,
Yeah.
even if you're only on the Orient Express for 2 or 3 days, you can put your makeup on the counter and,
Yeah.
your jammies under the pillow or, hang up your clothes or whatever. But if you're traveling in a private jet, you can't do that. So
Yeah.
I think I would feel disoriented because I would never I like stuff.
You
I
wouldn't
don't
have your
know where my
space. Yeah.
stuff is. Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree.
And so I would think that that might up the strain slightly if you had a group of people forced to be together in that situation for a period of time, and everyone was kind of divorced from, their normal routines and all the rest of it. You could do some interesting stuff with that. Let me see if I can find a link for you, and I'll send it to you.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
I
It
love it. Do I get co-author credit?
totally. Well, you'll definitely be in the acknowledgments.
Would be lovely. No, no, no. But no, I mean, I really think that would be an interesting thing to do. Very
I think it
contemporary.
would be really cool because have you read TJ Newman's like plane
She
book?
lives, she lives here. So
Oh
we're
wow.
doing her next book launch on October 12th. But
Oh,
yeah,
that yeah, her new one sounds good. But I was thinking like her plane, she thinks of like the most horrible things that could happen on planes. It's such suspenseful. So you find that with like a glamorous jet, you have something you can get a locked room thriller.
yeah, no, no, no. I think her books are absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, they are.
It almost makes you want to stop flying. And there's a very good one, the name of which I can't recall, but Claire McIntosh wrote a very
Mm.
good airplane thriller, so to speak. But it was different. Sorry, that's the dog who apparently has spotted something he doesn't like
Uh,
back there. So anyway, back to the book, because I keep digressing. So we have Rory and her best friend and her ex-fiance and her older brother, um, in a group on the train. And then the author has sent her lawyer, who's a very appealing, attractive Italian, older divorced father with a daughter who I think is also on the train. And so Rory has also had a bit of a relationship with him. So that adds even more romantic tension to this whole thing. And then they're moving along. I actually had lunch at Las Cibernudes one time.
did
So,
you?
yep. Have you been there?
No, I actually haven't been there. That's the one location in the book. I haven't been to Positano. So the book that's the least or the place that they spend the least amount of time in the book. But yeah, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, which is the benefit of writing now, where you can see so many travelogues and stuff. But no, I haven't been.
It's a lovely hotel.
It looks like it.
Not that it's in southern, not that far from Naples and Pompeii, because I think that the day that I had lunch there, we'd actually been to Pompeii for the whole
Mm,
thing. And then the car and the driver took us to Sivignouse for lunch. And it's
uh,
all terraces. And I mean, it's just really beautiful. Um,
it sounds amazing.
yeah, no,
I apologize to them that whatever what I did at their hotel, what I said, I won't spoil that what takes
well,
place
there are luxury hotels all over Europe that people, um, there's certainly some on the French Riviera and other places. Turkey is trying to develop its Aegean coast, to
Mm,
a glamour. They call it the Turkish Riviera, and they're
yeah.
working interesting stuff there, um and their yachts, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so we climax this book in Positano, and we can't tell you what happens, but it all comes together. So when do you, how much of your family story do you want to say, or will it all be spoilers?
No, I don't think it really will be spoilers. Yeah, I originally the father character in the book who has Alzheimer's and who is really nothing like my dad in personality or the way he is as a father, really anything like that. But my dad is a Soviet immigrant. He came to the US when he was 28 with 26 cents, and he was a refusenik from the Soviet Union. He grew up in Ukraine. And there was a lot of like his family experienced a lot of anti-Semitism and persecution for being Jewish. And in order to leave the Soviet Union at that time, if you were a Jew, there was this very narrow pathway to get out, and you could apply, and then you were either allowed to go or refused, and he was refused. So that status means he was like fired from his um, job and tailed by the KGB, and he could have been jailed, he could have gone to Siberia. I mean, there were really so many like horrible things that were happening to Jews who were applying to leave at that time. And eventually he kind of made a lot of fuss, and he wasn't going to go silently. And so they let him leave. And like 10 years ago, my family went back to Ukraine to see where my dad grew up. It was his first time back since he had left. And I ended up interviewing him for 3 years and writing a memoir about his life that I haven't yet chosen to publish, but I learned a lot about my family history and also my grandparents. Like my grandmother had escaped um, the Nazis were coming to her hometown when they invaded the Soviet Union, and she escaped on the last train from Kiev, and so she escaped the Holocaust, but her parents were murdered in mass graves there. So anyway, there was a lot of family history that I thought was interesting that people don't know about the Jews of the Soviet Union. And it's like we've talked about Italy, we've talked about the Orient Express, like, so you think like, where does the Soviet Union kind of slide in? But, it's a subplot, and the father character in the book is from Ukraine. And I gave him some of sort of my dad's backstory, like not the personality traits, but the things that happened to him and how he like applied to get out and ended up going to the US. And I won't spoil anything, but like, the way it intersects with the story is because the author, the Italian author, her family went to the Soviet Union. And so I'll just leave it there. But
No,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Well, it's really important to understand, how the book plays out, where everybody came from. I mean, it's not all Fiddler on the Roof
Right.
by a long shot, the whole bit. I'm trying to remember, I was looking over here at my phone so I can look up the actual title, but do you know that Mark Sullivan wrote a really astonishing book about the Ukrainian Jews in World War II? It's a
No.
brilliant thriller. I think it's called The Last Green Valley. He wrote a book called Beneath the Scarlet Sky, which was really fascinating.
Oh yeah, I read
But
that one.
this is the second book. And
Oh,
interestingly enough, the family, they were from the Ukraine, and they tried to escape, and they wound up even further back in the Ukraine. But amazingly, at the very end, they end up in Montana. Who knew?
wow.
I know it's really interesting, but since you brought that up, let me just see if that is indeed the title of it. But I think it's a book that you would read.
Yeah, that must be kind of new, huh? Because I like don't remember.
There it is. It is called The Last Green Valley. Um, and it starts in March 1944 as the Russians were pushing into the Ukraine.
Wow. I
The
definitely
Jewish
want to read that.
family tried to escape west and
Yeah.
ended up the father anyway, had to loop back. Then the mother and the children managed to make it into Western safety, but the father eventually got pushed back into the Soviet Union by sort of infiltrating the Nazis, which was really
Wow. I
scary. But
definitely want to read that.
yeah, no, it's a wonderful book. And in the very end, some of them end up in Montana. Mark has been very fortunate with these books that somehow the people who actually lived through the experiences have come into his life in proximity, or where somebody has
Wow.
told him a story or something. But I think for anyone who has any history with the Ukraine, being Jewish in the Ukraine, it's an amazing book to read.
Wow.
I loved Beneath the Scarlet Sky, but I think that The Last Green Valley actually had more impact on me.
Wow. I'm really
Yeah,
excited to read it. I had
yeah,
no idea that was out
yeah.
there.
Well, I hope you do. You know that I'm trying to think. There is a Ukrainian author who is now being published in England who is writing crime fiction. He had a book that came out recently. So you
Great.
know, it'll be interesting to see how much more we might learn about the Ukraine as a consequence of the war. And you know, we don't know how that's going to come out, but it has certainly put a spotlight um,
Yeah.
on the Ukraine. And part of what Mark said was that a large part of it was actually settled by Germans who were farmers
Really?
before the First World War. Yeah, and that was true because I have done the Danube trip from the Black Sea
Mm.
all the way up. But I've also cruised all around the Black Sea. And in 2011, before Russia came into the Crimea and all, so we spent a fair amount of time there, and many Ukrainians were German, as you know, their ethnic background, because they
So
were
interesting. I
recruited
did
to
not know
come.
that.
Yeah, it was sort of like, you know, the American settlers who went west to farm, you know, Kansas or something. There were a lot of Germans at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century who went to the Ukraine to farm in the same way. They weren't
Mm.
Jewish necessarily, and probably weren't. As a matter of fact, they were farmers.
Yeah.
And so they had some real loyalty issues when the war came along, you know, both
Yeah.
wars, what to do. So
Mm.
Europe is so tribal, you know. I mean, it's hard
Yes.
for us to remember. I mean, for it, well, we are here now too. So
Yeah.
maybe humans by nature are tribal.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's right. So what are you working on next?
Well, I sold two more books to my publisher, so they'll come out the next year and the following. And next year I have a book coming out that's called The Safari, and it's actually a murder mystery set on safari in Kruger National Park. And it's like a yeah, you were just
We've
talking
been
about the
there.
train. Yeah, me too. It's like since I went 10 years ago, I was like this, I have thought that that would be such a fun place to set a murder mystery. And I've never really read one set on safari, and definitely not in South Africa. It's like a glamorous family has a vacation there, and one of them is murdered. And so they're all kind of stranded at this luxury lodge and investigating each other. And actually, you know, when I was interviewing a bunch of people for the book, just South Africans, because I wanted to get, you know, I've been there, but it's been a really long time and I wanted to interview people. And they all kind of said the same thing, which is that like they were really excited that there was a book set in South Africa that's not about, like, not centrally about apartheid. That, you know, is like they were excited about that it's murder mystery on safari, because, you know, most books are yeah, not
That's
about that.
wonderful.
So yeah.
I remember being marked by King Solomon's Mines when I was a child, you know.
Yes.
Wonderful movie.
I have that on my bookshelf.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. And then you have one to write then if you have a two-book contract.
I'm a little ahead, but yeah, I'm working on one that will come out the year after.
So our airplane thriller will have to be like three books
Yeah, it's gonna have to be pushed off.
down the road. Too bad. Right. Well, you know, I'm glad that you are having such a good time with this. You know, then and you are indeed, you know, by going to various destinations and um, you know, giving yourself almost a travel treat every time you write a book.
Yeah, it's true, actually. It's really fun. I mean, I haven't gone to research every location. Some of them I've already been to, but last summer I did go to research the place I'm now writing. Like I'm writing my fourth thriller set in. So it's very fun to go get to do some research for, you know, part of the job.
tax deductible at some point or
Yeah,
other. So,
exactly.
no, it sounds absolutely great. So Ian, come and join us and tell us if we have any questions or if you have any questions.
Yeah, there's a few questions that have come through for Jaclyn. For the first one, how much research do you do before you start writing?
I do a lot of research. I usually spend about 4 months like researching and plotting for a book. I think because all my books are set in foreign places, there's like even though I've been there, there's a lot of cultural research I have to do and language and talking to people who are of that nationality. And then I usually research. Sometimes there's like a specialized profession. Like in this book, there was like some medical stuff. So I talked to some doctors and yeah. And then during the course of the book, like while I'm writing, I'll also research, but I try to do a lot before because it plays into the plotting of the book.
Do you have a writing schedule that you keep to?
Yes, it varies kind of based on what stage of the project I'm in. Like what I'm doing when I'm researching and plotting is different than like the writing of the first draft is also different than editing. But right now I'm writing like the first draft and I um like devote my mornings like that. My mornings are my best time because I'm a morning person. So like I need mornings to write fresh words, sometimes afternoons too, but I try to get them done in the morning. And when I'm like in an editing phase, that's like when I could work the most in a day. I could work like 14 hours just editing. Writing, I could never write 14 hours in the day, but so yeah, it can vary.
What do you find more challenging in the process? How to start the book or how to finish the book?
Oh, I love that question. Definitely starting. It's so funny because I have a friend who's published and is a critique partner, and we were just talking the other week about how for me the first 50,000 words are the hardest, and the second 50,000, the back half of the book just like flies. Like I usually finish it in like a month or a month or 5 weeks. And she said she's the complete opposite. The beginning, it just like flows and flows and flows. And then at some point she turns around and is like, wait, where is this book? Like where is it going? But for me, I find that like the first 50% is laying all the groundwork. It's like building the characters, planting all the seeds, like, and then I just feel like everything pays off in the second half because I'm a plotter. So I know it's going to pay off. I think if I was a pantser, maybe my answer would be different, but that's my take.
It's the legal training.
Yeah, exactly. Stay
Yes.
back.
Besides writing, what else do you like to do?
Um, I really like being in nature. I live like 2 blocks from the beach, so I'm on the beach usually twice a day, like for walks or sunset. I meditate, I do yoga. A huge reader. I guess most writers would say that. Um, yeah.
And finally, who are your must-read authors?
Oh, wow, so many. Well, I'm thinking of my auto buys that are coming out this summer. I always pre-order Daniel Silva's books. He writes like the Gabrielle Alone thriller series. I love that one. I mean, so many in my genre, like Ruth Ware's book came out the same day as mine. So I already finished it this week. She's an auto buy for me. I really like rom-com also. Sophie Kinsella, I've read for, I don't know, since I was in college and reading her. So, I always buy her books. Um, those are the ones that come to me off
That's
the top
great.
of my
Ruth
head.
did a hilarious event with us last night. You
I
should
saw
go.
that she was doing one with you guys. I want to watch it. Yeah.
To say you'd really enjoy watching it. Stuart
He's
Turton,
wonderful.
you missed him totally, but Stuart Turton was a wild card. He
Oh,
was so funny.
his book is on my Kindle. I'm 7.5. The Evan Hardcastle of his was one of my favorite thrillers. Like that, he's a genius. I'm so excited to read his new one.
Well, I have to tell you that in person, he's absolutely hilarious.
Oh,
And I could truly say I've never don't remember if I've ever used the word rollicking before to describe one of our author events, but it was. Is
Wow.
that it, Ian, in terms of questions?
That's
I
it.
didn't bring up one thing that these questions reminded me of briefly, but there's a heavy thread of Alzheimer's in the story, what it would be like to have it, but also how hard it is for people whose loved one has Alzheimer's, how to relate to it, how to try to care for them. There's a huge financial cost. Taking care of a disabled adult is a whole lot different than taking care of a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I thought you did that really well and with sensitivity. Do you know anyone, Jaclyn, that has Alzheimer's?
Oh, thank you. I have two close girlfriends, both of whom have a parent who has like Alzheimer's, and both parents like got it very young, like in their like early 60s. And actually like one of my friends, her father passed away last year. So yeah, I was like so sad. Of course, obviously it's so sad to like watch families go through that. Yeah.
It's basically like having somebody die, but not, as they're
Yeah.
gradually erased from you, and
Yeah.
from themselves, which I think is even more difficult. I mean, it's clearly as we have an aging population, Alzheimer's and dementia are something we all have to factor in.
Yeah.
There have been, I will say, it has appeared in many forms in fiction, and one form I thought was particularly interesting. And I love the book, and I never really sort of understood why his career didn't go further, but and I can't remember the title of it exactly, but basically it was about an aging spy who developed Alzheimer's, and suddenly people were all trying to kill him. And his son, who thought his father was a washing machine salesman, gradually realizes that here's the thing, that he is now the father with Alzheimer's is now a threat to the intelligence community because,
Wow.
well, but it would be true, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and I thought that was such an interesting basis, for a spy story.
Totally.
But and not really funny, but
Not funny. Yeah.
no, absolutely not. So I think it's one of those things we may see more of in
Yeah.
fiction, is it's something that more people have to deal with.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
motivations and so forth have really evolved over a century or more of crime. We were talking about that last night, Ruth and I, about shame. It used to be a very powerful motive in an Agatha or one of the Golden Age mysteries.
Mm.
People would kill to cover up shameful acts. But now
Wow.
today you can almost celebrate shame, if you look at our current national um, right. Well, I won't go into there with
That's
politics. But anyway,
interesting.
shame is, I mean, doing terrible things is a way to, acquire publicity and attention. Whereas it
Yeah.
used
Or
to be
maybe just
something.
different things are shameful.
Mhm, that
That's
too.
really interesting.
Yeah, no, it is. So I think as a crime writer, you have to kind of keep current with motivation as well as
Totally.
everything else. What is it that somebody would actually kill for?
Totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So anyway, I'm delighted to hear you have 2 more books coming. I will really look forward to the Safari mystery. Does it have a title?
Thank you. The Safari.
The Safari. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to look forward to next year. But meantime, we have the main character. Really an interesting story. And I think you'll all enjoy it. So thank you for sharing an hour with us, Jaclyn. It's great
Thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much.
You
This
bet.
was so fun. I love chatting with you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome. We are done. All right.